Okay, seems like we're up. If you're here already, just let me know in the chat if you're here. We'll be starting very soon. I just want everybody to roll in real quick. So while we're just waiting, I'll just quickly go through what I'm going to talk about today. So in this stream, I'm going to discuss how to implement audio, because last week Emmy was asking how do I play audio on Collision. So I'll show you just how to do that. Also, after that, David asked if I could explain arrays and how to use them. So that's a fairly complicated subject, so we'll spend a decent amount of time on that. But I want to make sure you guys understand arrays because they're very useful for a multitude of things involving programming and game development. So I want to make sure I dedicate a good amount of time to that. And then if we still have time after that, I want to talk to you and show you how to do IENumerators, which is a different way to do timers. They're not too complicated. They're a bit unorthodox, but they're very useful and helpful when developing games. So, like I said, if you guys are here, just type in the chat. We'll just wait, I guess, 1 or 2 more minutes. Okay, looks like David's here, and hi, Natalie. Hi, everyone. Okay, actually, since we have a few people here already, I guess we could just start. So the first thing I want to talk about is implementing audio. So if we just go to our player right over here, the cat player, the first thing we need to do when we want to implement audio is to add an audio source onto something. There's 2 main things to consider when you want to add audio. So first you need to make sure it has an audio source, and then there's also audio clips. So audio source and audio clip are 2 different things. An audio clip is the actual sound bite itself, whereas the audio source is the controller of that. It controls when it plays, how it plays, the volume, the various aspects of it. So if you see on the right side here, it says non-audio clip because we haven't dragged in an audio clip to play yet. There's different things you can do. You can mute it, play on awake, loop. By default, audio clips are always play on awake. I tend to uncheck it because most of the time I don't want it to play on awake. I want it to play when I tell it to. But if you just have background music running, if you just have music that's running in the background, I would recommend checking both of these off, play on awake and on loop. So that way, when you start the game, it'll just start to play the music, and once the audio clip is over, it'll just loop itself. So it'll play again from the beginning. And then, along with all this, there's these different sliders you could play with. You don't need to worry about that too much, besides the volume mostly. But you could just play with that in your own time if you'd like. But I don't think it's that necessary to talk about now, so I won't. But with audio clips, if I go to a sounds folder, I just brought in 2 sound effects, just random ones I just found on the internet, just to demonstrate how to do them. So once you have your audio clips here, these are just .wav files or .mp3 files, either or, it doesn't matter, and you just drag it in to audio clip here. So since I don't have it on play on awake, the audio clip won't play unless I tell it to. So if we want it to do something, we have to go into the code and then tell it to actually do something. So in the animal controller here, I'm going to make a public audio source. And this is going to we're going to drag in the audio source that we made over here. We're just going to drag it in once we make it. And for this example, I'm just going to make a hit sound effect. So when I hit something, it's going to play this audio clip. So I'll call this hit sound. Okay, so now that we have this here, all we have to do now is tell it when to play. So if we scroll down and look for where we actually do the collisions, which is all the way down here. So on trigger stay, like I said, MEX how to do collisions when collision's happening. So whether or not it's on collision enter, on trigger stay, on trigger enter, or exit, it depends on the type of game you're making. For our game, we're using on trigger stay. So this is our collision event that's happening. So on trigger stay, if the thing we're hitting is knockable, it has the tag knockable, which is this one. So either the vase or the pot here will be knockable. We're going to play the audio clip. So hit sound dot play is the code to actually play it. So on trigger stay, so once I'm within the trigger and it has the tag knockable, if I click the mouse button, it's going to play the hit sound along with all the other stuff we told it to do. So if we just play this real quick, okay, the audio is on, and make sure I drag and drop it in. Go to cat player, drag and drop the audio source into the hit sound we made, hit play, and once I walk into this and actually hit it, you guys should hear the sound effect playing. So, as you can see, it's playing the sound. It's perfect. That's what we want. It's as simple as that. And I'll just show you. I don't have the music brought up as an example already, but I just want to show you. If you wanted to have music running in the background, as I said, you just do play on awake and loop. So if I just have this already checked off and on, when I hit the play, it's just going to continually play the sound effect. So if you just imagine there was music playing, as you can hear, it's just going to keep looping. So if you have music that you just want to run in the background, make sure you have those two checked off. Otherwise, I wouldn't check them off because you want the sound effect to play only when you want it to. That's pretty much all I want to talk about with sounds. There's not much to it, but making sure you know where exactly you want the sound effect to be played is the most important part. And then you just type in the name of the audio source and then dot play. So now that I've done that, I'm not going to talk about arrays, which is the thing David wanted to talk about. So arrays are a bit more complicated. It's a structure of holding a bunch of things. So I'm first going to explain a metaphor around them, so hopefully you can understand the grasp the concept of arrays. So I just brought up a little picture here. So this is a street block. So I'm just going to whip out the snipping tool. So this is your street here. So imagine this is an array. This is an array of buildings. The array is just a street. So imagine that each element in an array is a building. So first off, an array is an accumulation of different objects. So whereas a variable holds a single container, an array will hold multiple, and it's defined by how big you tell it to be. So in this example here of a street corner, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 buildings here. So hypothetically, our array would be an array with a size of 7. So we're going to allocate 7 spots for these different objects to be held in. Arrays can be whatever type you want it to be, just like a variable. So as in, you could have an integer, a float, a game object, all these things. Arrays can be all of those things. It's just the amount of them that you have. So as you can see up top, we have like businesses, and then on the bottom we have houses, just residential houses. So you could think of these as the types that the array holds. So this will be type not residential, like industry. So this is an array of industry buildings. and it holds each building in a separate index. So the index, you could think of it like a street number. So just like on the street you live on, each house has a different number associated with it. So an array works the same way. So this will be index 0, because it starts at 0 and not 1. So this is house number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So since we have 7 here, it'll go, the size of the array is 7, but since it starts at 0, it'll go up to 6. So you could sort of think of it like that. I'll show you examples that I personally use to help you understand why you would want to use arrays, and then I'll get into how to actually use them through code. So you'll see I had a project up over here. This is a project I'm working on, and on the right side, you can see I have a ton of arrays set. So when you have an array, you can set the size of it on the right side. So this is a public array, so I gave it an index of 6. So once I gave it an index of 6, 6 options came up here, and then I can now fill these in. So this right here is a character array, so it holds different characters. So I want 6 of them, because in this game, it has sort of like a visual novel feel to it, where how the characters talk and interact with each other is like a visual novel. So there's 6 characters, quote unquote. One of them is just question mark when the player doesn't know who's talking. And then the underscore just represents a narrator. But I have a character that identifies which character is what index. So as you can see, H signifies that character H is at index 0, and so on. And then along with that, I have character name. So H, since it's 0, the character's name will be Hideyoshi, and then his image will be index 0, and various things like that. If I bring up the code I have for this, and just look at the dialogue, this is a big mess of complicated stuff that you don't have to know about, but just know that it runs through this text file, and it's going to look for the first character in the string, and based on that, it's going to say which one of these has that character, and if it has that character, it's going to grab that index and then load various things based on that index. So if I go back here, we have, so M is talking, so that means we're going to check back here. So M is index 1. I'm going to load in the various things associated with that character, such as I'm going to load the character's name onto the box. I'm going to load the character's image, a color associated with it, and just various things. So I'll just hit play. You can see the different things I'm talking about. So I'll just mute the audio. So this is M right here. So when it reads the dialogue right here, so scene dialogue 1, it's going to say M. So M is the character name. It's user inputted. So that's why it's MC. Just the temporary username I input was MC. So it's going to load MC. It's going to write the dialogue out. That doesn't matter. But based on that index, it's going to display the character. So M is this character. It's going to show this icon here and change the color. Because if you look back here, M is index 1. Then her name is MC, index 1 again for this array. Then her image is MC here. Her character that the panel is index 1 here. And all these things. So basically, I grouped up various data types based on a specific index of that character. Instead of storing them all separately as their own variable, it's a lot easier to just sift through them all and showcase them here. If I skip through the dialogue, you'll see when the next character comes up, Alice, you'll see on the bottom right, the icon changes, the color of the background changes, the name changes. That's because now we're on index 2, which is A. Her name is Alice. It's going to show her picture, and then the color associated with it, which is this pink. And one more thing I wanted to show with this, so hopefully you can understand why you would want to use arrays. If I go here, go to the main menu, and click on load game, you'll see I have 3 different save files here, and I have different data that's shown based on which save file it is. So I have 3 save files here. So this would be an index of 3, so the array would be 3 big, and I'll check it here. This is the code that loads all these various things onto this load menu, or the file menu to load the game. So you can see I have a for loop here. The size of the array is 3 because I have 3 save files. So I have 3 save files. So it's going to run through each of them. So for the first save file, it's going to see if there is a save file to be had. And if there is, you'll see I is the current index I'm checking through. So the first time it loops through, I is going to be 0. Then once it reaches the bottom, it's going to go to the top, and now I is going to be 1. So using this for loop, we could loop through each of the indexes of the array. So in order to go through each save file I have, we're going to go through it 3 times. So the first time it's going to be I, and then as you can see here, because I have everything in an array, I just get the position of the array and save the different things based on its position. So save file at 0 for the first time, we're going to get the panel, set it to false. So the panel is this black thing here that says no save file found. So because the save file exists at 0, we're going to turn that off. We're going to display the name here. So save file is 0. This panel at 0 is the first one. Its name, we're going to display MC, because that's the name of the save file. And all these various things. I won't talk about each of them, but I just want you to know that you could loop through an array and display various things based on the index of each array. So that was a big garbled mess of information I just threw at you. So I just wanted to throw all the information at you, and now we can understand it once I show you how to actually implement it into the game. So we'll go back to this game. So we just added a sound effect to be played when you hit an object, but let's say we don't want it to just be a single sound that plays when you hit the game object. We want it to be a random sound effect. So that would be an array, because if we go here, instead of making, let's say, 5 different sound audio sources to play each of these various sounds, we're just going to make one array that just stores each of the sound effects in the array. That way, when we hit the object, we're just going to pick a random index from that array, and it'll play that sound instead of just having a single one. So we'll go here, and we could make an array right here. So we're going to make it public audio source. Actually, no, it's going to be audio clip, because we're going to put the different sounds here. You only need one audio source, because the source, like I said, is the controller of them. It handles how the volume is and all that stuff. As with the audio clip, these are the actual sound bytes themselves. So we're going to make a public audio clip, and we're going to put these 2 brackets here. These 2 brackets indicate that this is an array. The size of the array we will determine in the inspector, since we made it public, and we'll just call these hit sound list. So go here, I saved it, we'll go back here, and once it loads up, you'll see we have a little drop down here, hit sound list. So by default, the array is size 0. Let's say we make it 5. Okay, so now we have 5 audio clips. So we can now import our different sound effects into here. I only have 2, so I'll just drag multiple times. Okay, so as you can see, instead of having 5 different audio clips, we just made one array with a size of 5, and we just input all our sound effects into that array. The alternative to doing this would be to do this. And I'll show you why this is bad, and you'll see why this is bad just as I type it out. You'll see that having an array is much cleaner, it looks nicer, and all these things. So public audio clip hit sound list 1. So like I said, this is just going to show what it would look like if I did not have an array. So if I didn't have an array and I wanted to have 5 audio sources that it'll randomly sift through to play, we would have to do this. Okay, so this is effectively the same as what we have right here, but this looks a lot worse, and it's a lot more difficult to sift through them. It's unorganized. It's a big mess. It looks bad. You can't fold it up here. All these various things that make writing it like this worse. Arrays, if I want to play this audio effect, let's say element 1, we would just do hit sound list bracket 1 dot play. Oop, not ready to play. Oh wait, my bad. Okay, so this is just an audio clip, as I said. So first we have to pass this audio clip into the audio source, and then we could play it from the audio source. So what we would do is do hit sound, this is the audio source itself, dot clip. So now we're setting the clip to be put there. So doing audio source dot clip means we're going to change this right here, but through the code. So hit sound dot clip is equal to hit sound list at 1 semicolon. So what this is doing is this is setting the hit sound clip to hit sound list 1, meaning we are going to set this right here equal to element 1 of our array hit sound list. So this would be glass smashable small break. So I have that in start. If I hit play, I won't maximize it. You'll see that this audio clip will change to glass smashable small break when I hit play. Oop. Okay, looks like it didn't. Okay. I wonder why that is. Hit sound dot play. Okay, so I guess you have to play it afterwards, but as you heard in the beginning, well, once I hit play, it played the glass smashable break drink, and yeah, it played it in the beginning when I started the game because I have this code in start. So in start, we're changing the audio clip to the one we have at index 1, which is the glass break sound, and then we're going to play that sound effect. And by playing the sound effect, it actively changes it here and plays the audio effect. So, like I said, I'll put that back. Oop. So this is effectively the same as writing this. Hit sound dot clip is equal to hit sound list 2. I guess to better name it with the indexes of the array, I'll type it out like this, because instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's how arrays work. They start at 0. So this would be the same as writing this. So yeah, okay. So this is the same as doing this. But this isn't exactly the only good thing about having arrays. I'll show you one more good thing about having arrays, which is being able to run through a for loop. So as I showed you in this other code here, I run through a for loop to go through each of the elements of the array, and I change various things about them as I run through the array. So I'll explain how to actually do that now, and what a for loop is and how to write one. So for this example, we'll just I'm going to change the array to a bunch of text elements, and I'll change the text using the for loop. So in start, in order to run through a for loop, we do for int I equals 0. So this first part, we're declaring a new variable I, and we're setting it equal to 0. And then you hit semicolon, but still in the brackets, we now do while int I is less than, I'll change this to text list to text list dot length. This is lowercase. Okay, so the second part of a for loop is you're declaring how many times you want the for loop to run. So first I'm declaring I to be equal to 0. And now I'm saying continue to run through this for loop. So run all the code that's in the for loop, the amount of times set here. So I want it to run as many times as it takes for I to be less than text list.length. So if we set text list.length to be the size of 5, so it stores 5 text elements, it would run through this for loop 5 times, because this is effectively the same as just writing 5. So as long as I is less than 5, it's going to keep running through the for loop. And the very last thing we need to do is I++. This last part indicates what should happen once it reaches the end of the for loop. So in the beginning, I is going to be 0. It's going to run through this loop, and then once it reaches the bottom, it's going to add 1 to I. This is the same as writing plus equals 1, as you should already know, but I'll write it like this anyway. So once it runs through the for loop, we're doing I is plus equal to 1, so we're adding 1 to I. So now I is equal to 1. It's going to check, is I less than 5? Because this is the same as writing 5. So it's going to say, is 1 less than 5? So 1 is less than 5. So it's going to run through the for loop again. It's going to run all the code that's in here. It's going to add 1 to I. So now I is equal to 2. Is I less than 5? It is. It's going to run through it, and etc., until I is finally 4. Once I is 4, 4 is still less than 5. It's going to run through the for loop. It's going to add 1 to I. I is now equal to 5. So now I is 5, and 5 is no longer less than 5. So it's going to stop running through the for loop and continue with all the code down here. So once it runs through all the code, once it runs through the for loop the amount of times determined here, it's going to exit the for loop and then continue with the rest of the code. So what we're going to use this for is we're going to run through each text element of a text list, change the text of each of them, and then continue on with the rest of the code. So I'm going to fix this up back to how I used to have it, because if we want to dynamically change how many elements are in the text list, we'll be able to keep it up to date. So if I had this as 5, and I change text list to be 6, let's say in the future, we add a new thing to the game, and now we have 6 text elements. this for loop is no longer going to run through all of them because I hard-coded the amount of times we loop through it to be equal to 5. If I write text list dot length, it's going to check how many elements are in text list, and it's going to run through it that amount of times. So make sure when you're doing a for loop, you make it the array length, the array name dot length, and then it'll run through it that amount of times. So for each of these, we're going to do text. Oh, that's not what I want. We're going to do text list at I is equal to I. So, dot text is equal to array pause I. Okay, we'll do that. So as I run through this array, I'm going to make it display this so that you can see the result of it running through each element of the array. So basically, it's going to run through the array, and so the first time it's going to be 0. So it's going to say text the element as 0 here. Wait for it to load since I changed it. So we're going to put 5 here. It's going to say this text element here, its text, like the text it actually displays to the screen, we're going to change it to say array pause plus I. So again, I is 0, so it's going to say array pause 0. So the first text element is now going to say array pause 0. Now it ran through the for loop. It's going to add 1 to it. So now I is equal to 1. 1 is less than 5. It's going to run through the loop again. Text list at 1, because now I is equal to 1. It's going to grab this text element 1. It's going to change the text that gets displayed to the screen, equal to array pause plus I. So again, I is now equal to 1, and so it's going to display array pause 1, which is different from what it displayed the first time, because the first time it was array pause 0. So as you can see, now we're changing it based on which position of the array it is. I'll just quickly make 5 text elements to show you how this actually works. Do this. Boop, boop, boop. Four, 5. And let me position each of these in a nice spot. Put that here.
Yeah, I'm here Home Depot, Mom.
Okay.
Oh, shit. Wait, that's supposed to be quiet, or are you done?
No, I'm doing it now. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. So, sorry about that. I'll just put this here. Put it back to 10. No, that's way too small. We'll make it 15. Put this here. And we'll lower each of these. Why is this not working? Get rid of this. Let's make this bigger. Cameo. Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. I told him not to come down, but I guess not. Okay. So 1, 2. Sorry for the brief way while I just set this all up for you. You'll see why I'm doing this once I'm done. Okay, so I have my 5 texts. I'm just going to put them in order that they're here. So as they run through the loop, the for loop, it's going to say array pause 0. This one's going to say array pause 0. This is going to 1, 2, 3, 4. So as I go back here, I'm going to put the text back here. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're gonna hit play, and let's see if it works. So as you can see, it changed all of these to the number that they are in the array, because we wrote this for loop right here. So this is obviously useful for a variety of things. As I said in my example, the indexes of which character is talking is very important. So based on the index of each of them, I just ran through a for loop and displayed the various things about them based on that index. So yeah. You could use this for however you want. If you want, we can also, if I make this, okay, I'll show you one more thing that I think will put into your memory how to use these arrays. So we're gonna bring back the audio clip. So we'll call this audio clips. So what we're gonna do is each time we hit a vase, I'm gonna get a random number between 1 and 5, well 0 and 4, because it's gonna pick a random number that indicates one of the array indexes here. So there's 5 here, so it's gonna pick either 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we'll do int random is equal to random dot range. And I guess here's just one more lesson if you don't know about it already. This is how you get a random number. You do random dot range, and then the value, the lowest value you want, and then the upper echelon plus 1. So doing 0 to 5 will give you index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it'll give you 5 values. So yeah, it's a bit confusing because you would think that this would be 0 to 4, but it's 1 more than the one you want it to be. So now that we have this random number, we can do we'll do audio hit sound dot clip is equal to, what did I name this? Audio clips at random. So audio clips at random num, and now we can do text. I forgot what I called this one too. Sorry about that. Text list. We'll just call the top text list dot text list as 0. So this is going to be the top one. Dot text is equal to audio clips random dot name. So what we're going to do, we're going to hit something over. When we hit something over, it's going to pick a random number based on the index based on the size of the array. So I guess a better way to write this, a more dynamic way to write it so that it always works, would be to write audio clips.length, because again, audio clips.length is equal to 5. So if I add 1 more to it, if I add 6 to it, this will still work. So it's going to pick a random number. Let's say the number is 4. It's going to make the audio source equal to the audio clip we have at index 4, and it's going to show the name of that audio clip onto the screen based on text as 0. Theoretically, this text here doesn't have to be an array, but we just have it here anyway because I was showing you before. And let's actually hit save. And Okay, audio clips 5. So again, I have, we'll just put these here. Oh no, I keep missing. Okay, so it's going to pick a random one here each time we hit, and it's just going to display the name of it on the top text. So let's put here. Oop. Oh no. Let me maximize it. Oh, the camera. Okay. No. There we go. Okay. So, I did make the text big enough so you can see the whole name of it. But you'll see it randomly picked one. If I hit it again, see, it picked a different sound effect that time. I only have 2, so it's only going to pick between those 2. But each time I hit it, it's going to play a different one. And it'll update the text with that new sound effect each time I hit it. So hopefully it gives me the glass one. Oh god, I can't see. Oh, this is an elusive face. Oh no, that was the same one. Okay, whatever, that's that. But you saw it worked. Like I said, I just want to show you, these are the various things you could do with arrays. And yeah, so that's how you use an array. The purposes of them are very nifty, because instead of doing, I guess I'll quickly just run through the alternative. As I said, the alternative would be making 5 different ones. So the other way of writing it would be, it's going to pick a random number, and then you would have to do this instead. You would have to do if random is equal to 0, then you would make this equal to audio clip 0, and so on. I didn't make these variables, so that's why there's a thing here. But if you made them all separately instead of using one array, this is what your code would look like. So this audio clip here, and so on. This is way more of a mess, unorganized. It runs slower than to just simply use an array and your code is 3 lines. Well, I guess 4 if you include his sound.play. So arrays are very helpful. I would very much try to implement them into all your games. They're very useful for many purposes. One more way I'll show you is to incorporate the next subject I want to talk about, which is IEnumerators. So a simple way to explain IEnumerator is it's basically just like a timer, basically. As I make this next game object, you'll understand what I mean. So I'm going to make a spawner that spawns a random game object every set amount of time. How do you know? Okay, so Natalie's asking, when you're making a game, how do you know when you need to use an array? So if you have a bunch of variables of the same data type that basically do the same thing, throw it in an array. So here you'll see I have audio clips. These are a bunch of sound effects I want to play when I hit something. So I want to use an array here because they all have the same purpose, they're all the same data type, and I want to be able to easily choose between them. Yeah, so that's why you would want to use an array. If they're those 3 main things, definitely make it an array. If I'll say it one more time, if they're the same data type, they serve the same purpose. And I forgot what I said already, but this is much better than writing it 5 different variables, because you could easily sift through them. It's okay. Okay, yeah. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, okay. Like I said, the one last thing is arrays are also dynamic. That's the last thing I wanted to make sure you knew. Arrays are dynamic. As I said before, the alternative to writing this would be, let's see if it saved it. Okay, it didn't save it. But that mess I had before, where I checked through each number. So if the random number was 0, I was like, if it's equal to 0, play audio clip 0. Hard writing it like that is not dynamic at all, because each time I make a change to this, I'm going to have to go back into the code and add one more to it. If I just have it in this array here, I can make this 100, and this code will still work exactly the same. It's always going to play the audio clip. It's always going to choose a random number that's based on the size of that array. It's always going to display the name of the audio clip that it chooses, and it's always going to play the sound properly. That's the most important part about arrays, is that they're dynamic. I've seen people yeah, that's one thing you could do. If you for David's game, well, I read out what Natalie said. Natalie said, David, you could probably use an array with the food locations on the table in your game. Another thing you could do is, when you call on the phone and you have somebody come to your door, you could potentially make the different people that come to your door different and throw them each in an array. So when you make a phone call to order food, you could just choose a random game object that's in an array. So you could throw all the game objects, which are delivery men. So put delivery men into the array, and then when you call in a delivery order, you could just pick a random delivery man from that array and then have them come to your door. So in order to diversify the gameplay a bit, just make it feel more natural, just throwing everything into that array would make it all nice. Let's say in the future you want to add 4 more delivery men. You could just now add that to your array, and you won't have to go back into your code and add them all individually. But that's that. I'll get into the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is I'm going to make a random spawner. So this will be real quick. I'm going to make a new script. We're just going to call it object spawner. And this will be a real short script to write. But I'll explain how IEnumerators work, and also show one more time the usefulness of arrays. So we're going to do public game object bracket objects to spawn. So again, I put these 2 brackets here. This is going to be an array. So I'm going to have an array of potential objects to be spawned by this object spawner. And then I'm just going to also have time to wait. And let's make that a float. So this is going to be how long it waits before it spawns another game object. So to make an IEnumerator, you type in private void IE. What am I doing wrong? Okay, my bad. Just write IEnumerator. This is going to be your object spawner. And we won't take any arguments. So, as you can see, this is going to give you an error because it's expecting a return type. So, the return type is going to be how long it waits in our case. So, return, we're going to do yield, return new, wait for seconds, and we're going to put the time to wait here. What's wrong with this? Object spawner cannot be the same as their enclosing type. Must be writing this wrong. If yields return new, wait for seconds, time to wait. Could have sworn it was that. Let me just double check. So, as I said, it's just IEnumerator. Is it just IEnumerator? It's still giving me an error though. So, what am I forgetting? I don't seem to be missing anything. Oh, I'm dumb. Okay. Okay, this is a stupid mistake. It can't be the same name as your class. Okay, that was a very stupid mistake on my part. Okay, so object spawner. Go. Okay. Okay, here we go. So now it works. Like, okay, so make sure it's not the same name as your class, otherwise it won't work. But sorry about that. So I'll explain what this means now that we have all the errors gone. So yields return new, wait for seconds. This is going to say wait this long before continuing on. So you could put code here and put code here. Ooh. Code. Oh, I know how to spell. Okay. So once you call this IEnumerator, it's going to run this code here. Then it's going to wait the amount of seconds we put here. So let's just say hypothetically it's 5. So it's going to run this code. Then it'll wait 5 seconds. And then it'll run the code after this, after that 5 seconds. So instead of making your own timer that you constantly tick down, then once it reaches 0 or whatever, you set it back to the max time and all over again. Instead of doing that whole cycle, you could just write an IEnumerator. So we'll get rid of this. And what I want to do with this IEnumerator is I want to instantiate. Actually, we need to get a random number first, because I'm going to pick a random game object from this array we have here. Equals random.range 0 to object spawner. Object to spawn dot length. So as I already said, this is going to pick a random number based on the size of this array. Now I'm going to instantiate that game object. So instantiate object to spawn, and since this is an array, we have to give it a position, an index. So that index is going to be the random number we put here. So if it gives us 2, the game object that's at position 2 is going to get spawned. And then I'm going to spawn it just at its transform.position and quaternion.identity. So when I call this IEnumerator, it's going to instantiate a random game object, then it's going to wait 5 seconds. But we also have to make it do something after that 5 seconds is over. Otherwise, there's no point using the IEnumerator. So what we can do is we're just going to call the IEnumerator again. So in order to call this IEnumerator, you do start coroutine, and you type in the name of the IEnumerator itself. Object spawner, go. And make sure you put the 2 parentheses here and semicolon. So now it'll spawn the random game object. It's going to wait 5 seconds. Then it's going to call this and do it all over again. So every 5 seconds, it's going to spawn a new game object. The last thing we need to do, though, is we have to make sure that we actually start the coroutine in the beginning. So in start, we're just going to start the coroutine, and the cycle will just infinitely continue. So let's go back to the game here. Going to add the object spawner here. Let's make it 5 seconds. We have 2 potential objects to be spawned. Ooh, oh god. So prefabs, I already made the vase. We should also make one for the house plant. original prefab. Oh, I guess I should make it this though. Okay, so we have our two prefabs. Gonna go back to our object spawner. I'll just rename it here. So our array is size 2. Gonna put our two game objects in there. And let's just make sure that this is in a good spot. Put 0, 0, 0. And put it right over here. So every 5 seconds, a new game object, a random one between these two options. Oh, I'll explain quaternion identity in just a sec. So, play the game. So it spawns it. It's going to wait 5 seconds, and it'll spawn another one. So it spawns another one, and as you can see, I've randomized the game objects that are being spawned based on the array. And every 5 seconds, it's just going to continually do it. This is a lot cleaner than manually writing your own timer system to go off every 5 seconds. But that's how you use an IENumerator. They're very useful. I would recommend putting them in your own games. But as for what David asked, what is quaternion.identity? So when you instantiate something, you give it a game object to be spawned, a transform.position. So it's going to spawn at the transform.position of the game of whatever game object the script is attached to. So since it's right here, this is its transform.position. It's going to spawn there. And then quaternion.identity, anything that has to do with quaternion is always rotation based. So this is setting the rotation. You could set a specific rotation you want it to be spawned at, but writing quaternion.identity, this just gets the rotation of this current game object and just spawns it in at that rotation. So it's basically just the default rotation that you want it to be spawned at, and that's about it. Quaternions are quite confusing. But if you wanted to change the rotation of the game object on spawn, you would change this here to be like transform.euler or whatever. But that's a video for itself, because quaternions are a whole big subject that I can't explain in the 3 minutes we have left in class. But just so you're aware, quaternion identity is just spawn at the default rotation of the game object, in simple terms. So that's IEnumerators. Hopefully you guys understood the whole array spiel I went on. But like I said, I'll say it one more time, because arrays are one of the most useful things you could do, what you could know about. And then also using for loops in order to, where do I do it? Actually, I don't do it here. But using for loops to sift through each of them is also very important. I've seen people, it's not a pretty sight, write like 100 if statements for each potential option of their array. Because they didn't use an array, they made 100 different variables, and then based on a random number or based on a number, they would check through each potential option. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They would write a different if statement for each of those. And no, that could go upwards of like 1,000 lines of code. I've seen it happen before. Just using a for loop to sift through each of them is a lot simpler. It's like 4 lines of code. It's faster on the CPU. Just please, please use arrays and for loops. They're wonderful. One more time. If you want it to be dynamic, they all have the same data type, and they all share the same purpose. Make sure you put it in an array. That's the main thing I want you to take out of this lesson today, because lessons are great. Thank you, David, for asking me to talk about this, because it's a great idea, a great concept, something you should definitely know about. You can't enter this field without knowing about arrays or how to use for loops. So that's just one thing I want to talk about. There's 1 minute left. That's pretty much all I want to talk about. But there is one more thing I just want to throw at you last minute, because this serves its own purpose, but it's its own specific purpose. I said you could run through a for loop to do various things. So if you need to know the index specifically, like I need the specific index here, you need to use a for loop because you need to know the index. It runs through it sequentially, like 0 to whatever number you want it to be. In this case, 3, because I have 3 save files. But if you don't necessarily care about the index, you just want to run through each thing in that array, you could write a for each loop, which is different from a for loop. This does not give you an index of anything, but it'll just easily run through every thing in that array. So if I wanted to run through, what did I name it again? The audio clips. Actually, no, the text. If I wanted to run through the text, and so for each, you do the data type. So for each text, then you give it a variable name. So text name. This could be whatever you want it to be. The word in. So for each component, each text data type in text name, we'll call text name in, and then this is the array itself. One day I'll remember what I named this. Text list. Okay. So for each text, and then the name of it in text list. So this is just going to sift through each text element in text list. And then if you want to change it, like I said, you can't get the index based on this. So this is just if you want to change everything to be the same, or you just want to sift through everything. You would do text name dot text is equal to Apple. So what this would do, it's going to run through each text and just rename it to Apple. I'll take this out of on trigger. I'll just put this in start so that it just runs in the beginning. But what this will do, it's just going to change all the text here to just all say Apple. So we hit play. Now they all say Apple. So they each serve their own purpose. For each loops, just easily just run through everything. You don't really need to care about the index. But if you do need to know the index, you have to use a for loop and not a for each loop. But it's sort of preference. I just wanted you to know about both types so that you know that they exist. Or if you find one more confusing than the other, or whatever. At least you know about both of them. That's pretty much all I have for you this week. If you have anything else you want to learn about, just make sure to let me know. You can just type it in the stream chat here, and next week I'll make sure to bring it up. Just like this lesson. This lesson was pretty much entirely based on your recommendation of stuff you wanted to learn. If you have anything else you want to learn, just tell me, and I'll do a lesson on it. Me and Natalie have some videos coming up soon that'll be posted on our YouTube channel. They're just more tutorials. If you just want more things to refer back to, you'll be able to look at our YouTube videos, and hopefully they'll be helpful to you. So that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you guys understand how to do sounds, arrays, and you learned about IEnumerators. These are all very useful things, and I hope to see them in your game. Make sure to keep working on them. They're due the 30th, and I'm looking forward to see what you guys do. I was very happy with what I saw last week. Your games look beautiful. Honestly, I was very impressed with the work you've done in just this very short time. But stay safe with all this coronavirus happening, and goodbye.